Good evening. Thanks everyone for coming to the neighborhood meeting. Great Wausau spirit and turnout. Normally Officer Carlin gives police updates for the neighborhood. He couldn't make it this evening, and I think the time is going to be pretty taken up as well. Tonight we have guests from the city's ED and Community Development Department, as well as others, Public Works and the mayor. They're going to talk about 1300 Cleveland and get your ideas and opinions, and they put a lot of time and effort into doing this for the neighborhood, so let's give them a warm welcome.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate everybody coming out tonight. It's great to have a packed room. It means a lot. More people involved in this process, we feel that we'll have a better outcome at the end. So as Tom stated, this is the public engagement meeting. We're here to gather your thoughts, your ideas for future non-industrial land uses at 1300 Cleveland. Like I said, glad you're here. If anybody needs to use the restrooms, they're out. Take the lobby, take a left. We've got water and cookies up here for everybody. I think everybody's familiar with this location, but if you're not, south of St. Vincent de Paul on Cleveland Avenue. I'm going to go through a little bit of property history of it. Not going to go in depth, but obviously long ago it was an industrial property. What we're looking at today is looking at non-industrial land uses. You'll see that there's a transition from that through the timeline here. I think most interestingly, the city now owns the property, and that's somewhat of a recent happening, as well as the MRL zoning, which is a residential zoning. We'll talk more about that as we continue through the process. Also want to mention in 2023, the site concepts that were delivered as part of the university. I'm going to cover that in my next slide just to give a little bit more background on what happened with that. And then finally, the reason we're here today is our Economic Development Committee at the city asked us to work with the public, engage the neighborhood on looking for non-industrial uses, and that's what we're going to do. So as I mentioned earlier, university year site concepts. So this is the University of Madison. They have classes. These are kind of capstone projects for those classes. They were given the property, and ideas came out of that. 3 different proposals came forward, and if anybody wants any of this information, we can provide more after. We've got your email addresses and want to keep everybody in the loop. Proposals 1 and 2, you'll see all of these have somewhat of a residential component to it, but they also included in proposal 1 had a child care community center component. The proposal 2 had community center as well as a grocery store, and the third one had that child care facility. Now, we're going to talk more about zoning later in the meeting. Of these concepts, proposal 3 would meet the current zoning. Others would require some bit of alteration. That being said, I'm going to turn it over to Director Eric Lindman. He's going to talk a little bit about the environmental.
And so the environmental process for this site, the phase 2 or the soil investigation actually began back in 2020. Where the city went out to a competitive bid to hire an environmental consultant to work on some soil investigation for us and to see if contaminants were at the site and what they were. So we took some soil borings. There was contamination on the site in the soils. We submitted those to the DNR. The DNR submitted us a responsible party letter as the city is the owner of the property. That happened in 2021, and then also in 21, the DNR approved our site investigation work plan. And so that was really our strategy to fully investigate the site, additional soil investigation to determine exactly what is in the ground, anything that has to come out, what remediation needs to happen in the future. In 2022, based on the information that we had, we prepared a site investigation report. The DNR conditionally approved that in 22. As you remember, in 22, PFAS became a very widespread discussion, right, throughout the country. And so all of the open environmental sites in 22 going into 23, the DNR determined that they wanted groundwater testing on all of those open sites, and this was one of them. So the DNR requested 2 rounds of groundwater sampling for PFAS, and we completed those. And the site investigation report was formally closed in 2025. At which time we are now in the phase of preparing a remedial actions options report, which is basically options for closing the site, addressing the contaminants that are on site and bringing the site to closure. That can either happen with or without a development. Just a couple weeks ago, our consultant came and spoke to the city council, gave a presentation on some remediation options for the city to determine, or at least consider. It's important to note that all of those 4 options, none of them considered any sort of proposed development for the site, other than that it was going to be non-industrial. And so, obviously, if development for the site is determined at some point through this process before the remedial actions options report is submitted, the process of what needs to be done may change based on those four options. So, and that's kind of where we are today, to gather some input about some future options and see what the neighborhood wants for that property moving into the future. Hi, Terry.
Hi, may I ask a question?
Yeah.
I know you said that the REOR could be submitted prior to the redevelopment plan.
Yep.
I have communicated with Jane Gray at the DNR, and I do have an email from her, and I think it's important that the residents know. She has indicated that it is more efficient for the REOR to be submitted with the decided upon redevelopment plan. So I'm hoping that for the neighborhood, we will wait until we know what we're going to put there that's not industrial, and that the REOR will be submitted in parallel, as we talked about, with that development plan. Thank you.
I 100% agree with you. I talked with Jane this afternoon as well, because we have to get an extension. There was a 60-day timeline to submit the REOR. They gave us an extension through January. She indicated today and gave me an email as such too, that they're willing to work with the city as we work through this process. And so currently we don't have a deadline, as long as the process continues and the discussions continue. So, yeah.
I think next, we're gonna turn it over to Carrie.
Yes, Brad and I are gonna present next. Before we get started, I'm gonna pass these around. Part of our process is gonna be a survey that we're all gonna take together. You have the option of taking it on your phone or a paper survey. If your preference is the paper survey, just take a pencil so you have.
Okay, then if we're all set with that, then we're gonna go back to our presentation. So like Randy said, today we're collaborating with the public to obtain feedback on non-industrial land. Yes, okay. So today we're collaborating with the public to obtain feedback on non-industrial land use preferences for the 1300 Cleveland Avenue site. And I just wanna say, I think it's very commendable to have this kind of a turnout at a public meeting. I mean, it just shows the interconnectedness of your neighborhood, it shows your passion for the neighborhood, and it's very impressive, you know, on a cold night to have this kind of turnout. So I think it's something to be really proud of, and just, that's really neat to have that connection within the community. And I wanted to also note, just so we don't forget, we're gonna do the survey together at the meeting. That way, if people have questions for us, you have the opportunity to ask or clarification. But we are gonna have it available for 30 days after, where people can do a paper copy or an online version. So if you know other friends or neighbors that couldn't attend, please feel free to forward this information. We have a public-facing page on our website. We'll be emailing it to any attendees. Feel free to share it out, and it'll be open for another 30 days.
Question in the back.
Yes.
I think that as each of you talk, it would be helpful if you introduce yourself.
Oh, sure. Sure. So we'll go back to the beginning. Let's go back to the beginning. So Randy Pfeifrick is the development director. Then we had Eric Lindman, who is the Public Works Director. Okay. I'm Carrie Edmondson. I'm the assistant city planner. Okay. Nice to meet you. Okay, so first we want to just talk briefly, we're not going to talk long about this, but just to provide some information about factors that impact development. So when we're thinking about selecting land uses, some of the things we think of in the city are the zoning district is one factor. We have 27 zoning districts in the city. It's currently zoned MRL 12, which is a multifamily zoning district. there's only 3 of those 27 districts are industrial. So just for context, we have a lot of zoning districts that aren't industrial, but uses that are permitted in the zoning district are allowed. I mean, that's basically the simplest way to say it. We also have, if the 6.77 acre parcel is subdivided, we can do a lot of smaller duplexes, smaller twin homes, things like that on the parcel. If it's a single parcel like it is now, then we could have 1, which would be very unlikely and strange, but land division is another thing that we would think about. Market demand, if we're thinking of a private developer that's not the city, of course, whatever they think will be successful or they think they'll be able to sell is what's gonna work for them. And then just the costs associated with development. So, like I said, our current zoning now is MRL 12, which is basically a multifamily residential 12. The 12 stands for roughly 12 units per acre, is kind of how it's a density measurement in a sense. So principal uses by right, these are just uses they could do, uses someone could do if it was proposed. Duplex, twin house, and we're gonna go into more detail when you're ranking what your preferences are, we'll give more information because some of these things may mean something to us and it may mean something completely different to someone else, and every zoning code is a little different. So these are just the way we kind of define things. Twin house, 2 flat, townhouse, which is a connected row of townhomes usually, multiplex, apartment, which is an internal entrance, single-family living arrangement, outdoor open space institutional, passive outdoor recreation, active outdoor recreation, essential services, community living arrangement, and community garden. And like I said, we'll go into more detail when we start to look at these when we're ranking our preferences, just to make sure everyone has a good sense. We're all on the same page when we're talking about if that's something we'd want to see or not, basically. And I'm now gonna turn it over to Brad, who's the city planner, and he's gonna talk a little bit about some of the other uses and zoning factors.
Sure, thanks, Karen. So in the MRL 12, Carrie mentioned the uses that are permitted by right, which means, as long as you follow the standards, you don't need other approval other than to get the building permits and so forth. Besides that, there are conditional use permits that these listed uses, you have to get special permission from the plan commission, and they can put stipulations on those uses. They can approve it or not approve it, but they are potentially allowed in the district as well. And they're similar to the permitted uses by right. They're listed there: townhouse, multiplex, apartment. They're each 5 to 8 units per building. So these are low-density residential buildings. The differences are really in how the form of the building, whether the entrances are individual to the units or like an apartment, it's just one entrance in a common hallway. Boarding house living arrangements, those are allowed by conditional use in a variety of zoning districts throughout the city. Live-work unit we'll talk about later. It's one of our uses that we'll ask you to rank. Group daycare. Community living arrangements, again, this is allowed throughout the zoning code, and actually in all residential districts. Communication tower allowed by conditional use in all zoning districts, and cultivation, same thing. So again, these need special permission, but they could potentially be allowed in the zoning district that's there now. So I guess with that, we'll go right to the survey. We'll talk about some of the uses that we introduced and some other ones that we thought are similar, but not necessarily in the zoning district, but a handful of other uses that we'd like your opinions on. So if you'd like to take it electronically, if you can use the QR code, great. If not, the same information is in the handouts there. So we'll go through one by one. As the instructions say, there's 20 of these, and we're looking for you to rate them 1 star to 6 stars. 1 meaning it's your least, it's your level of preference. So least preferred is 1, 6 stars being the most preferred. So those are the best. 6, 1 is least preferred. And you'll notice there's some space on there too if you have comments. If you want to qualify your ranking and say, well, I gave it a 6 because of this, or I like this but not this. You can certainly add those comments in right on the survey, or there's some space at the end too for some open-ended comments if you'd like to make those. But like Jerry said at the beginning, we'll go through one by one and we'll talk about them. If you have questions about them, you'll let us know. And then, but you'll rank them individually on your paper or on your survey.
Question. If we take the totality of that land up there at 1300 Cleveland, and I'm kind of old-fashioned, so I'm gonna use some old-fashioned words. How polluted is that place? And is it hot, cold, or where are we at as far as what kind of pollution are we talking about there nowadays that you might have to remediate to do something at all?
There will be remediation required, right? We know that with the contaminants of the soil, right? They exceed the non-industrial standards with the DNR. There's, none of it is classified as hazardous waste. It doesn't reach that threshold. So everything that's removed from that site will go to the Marathon County landfill.
Okay, so it's not as, I'm reading what you just said to me, as I go back to the Holt-Krause landfill, it's not as bad as that place potentially could have been?
Right, I'm not exactly sure what was there, you know, but at an old landfill, right? I mean, you can have just about anything in there. But yeah, I mean, the soils are, the contaminants are typical of old waste fill that was brought in to bring the site up, right? Yeah, so they had some metals and some other things. Yes, sir.
Are we ignoring all the barrels that were buried there and only some of them have been disposed of?
Well,
There were hundreds of them barrels in that pond.
Yes, sir. I worked there and I know that pond.
Those are dead hazmat. I mean, we're trying to put it away like there's no hazmat anymore?
right, there's nothing that we've discovered in there is considered hazardous material to that
When they
level.
showed the maps the other day at the council meeting, there were two sections of the property that were tagged as, I'll use the phrase extra special, that had a higher level of contaminants. Now that may be the pond that you're referencing so they have recognized two different areas in the parcel that they say have to require more attention. So it's not being washed over.
Well, it's just the sound when Eric says, well, there's no hazmat there. Well, nobody's removed it as far as I know. And I've lived across the street from her for 53 years.
And we're gonna be working on the industrial, and I don't want to say, like, make it look like we're ignoring any of that. Really, our purpose for our meeting here today is talking about non-industrial land uses. We're working through two parallel processes. The environmental is another process. We could probably be here all night if we went through everything on the environmental standpoint, and, you know, it's a complicated process. But we wanna focus on non-industrial land uses moving forward, so we can move forward and work on that Aurora, and that's gonna bring a lot of these other things forward as well.
Okay, I got one more thing. And that, you're talking about the DNR saying, give us what you're gonna use with the property, then we'll decide how we're gonna clean it up. I thought we had decided a long time ago that we're gonna clean it up to residential standards,
Yep,
okay?
yep,
All
that's
right,
happening.
right, but they're wanting two things at once, and how are you gonna get anybody to say, I'll develop it, but it hasn't been cleaned up yet? I don't think you're gonna find many developers that are gonna commit to building an apartment house or a whole bunch of houses when the state says, well, you don't have to clean it up until you've decided, and then the ones that say, well, we're not gonna decide, catch 20.
Well,
Yeah, perhaps this will be helpful because for people who are here, so next month at our meeting, which is also the last Thursday, the DNR is the guest presenter. They will be presenting on their brownfield programs, how they handle this, so please come because, well, I certainly as a layperson haven't always agreed with the DNR. They will make sure that whatever is chosen, that there is remediation sufficient for that type of development. Lastly, just to keep it brief, on the East River front, for example, significantly contaminated, exceedances of DNR standards, just like this site. Those can be addressed effectively. In 2015, you were already looking at millions in grant pursuits to clean it up, and that's what I've heard from the neighborhood, whether it's the East River front or the mall redevelopment for Waz and the Foundry. We don't want to be shortchanged, so we'd like to know how much you spent in total remediation dollars on each of those, so when people figure out what they like here, it is cleaned up as rigorously as that, and that the city doesn't push back in some inconsistent way that is unlike what was done on the riverfront or for Waz and so forth.
Yep, understand.
I got it quickly. I live 1 block away. If I walked really fast, I could be there in 2 minutes, but I worked in all these properties. When Connors transferred over and they shut down, I had gentlemen, my neighbor worked there, was a boss for years. He showed me where stuff's buried. I saw where the barrels were. I saw where the barrels were transferred to. And back early 2000s, they had, there's a lot of stuff buried, and I can show you where I know, and the barrels that were buried were bad back then, just imagine. And I know where the pond was, it was just too accumulated. They didn't want it running over the bank. There's a bunch of bad stuff there. I personally believe it shouldn't be for any kind of residential because of all this stuff. My wife died of cancer. My neighbor died of cancer. My other neighbor died of cancer. They've checked people out here. You know what? People are dying here, and it's like there's a lot of chemicals in the ground. I mean, from Crestline, all the stuff that went through there. I mean, there's a bunch of bad stuff out there.
So,
And if you ever want me to show you exactly where I know it was buried, and it was sealed on top, they put concrete on. They put actually a couple more feet on top of that concrete. So anyways, and like where St. Vincent de Paul is, that ground is contaminated, but nobody lives there. I'm thinking, whatever we do with the property, it shouldn't be for like residential. My personal opinion, it should be like for storage. I mean, we could put a bunch of storage stuff there, and you know what? People don't live there, we don't have to worry about the effects of children, especially young. There's a lot of lead. In 3M Park, why did the city get that? Because 3M said, well, that ground's for leaking. I'm just putting words in people's mouths.
I think on your survey.
yeah, let's get to the survey, cause I really want it, that's exactly what we wanna hear. I mean, we wanna know what people think, and those are the
I've lived
notes.
here for 40 years, and I worked here before that, and
And those are the notes that would be good to include, that information that you know where you think,
oh yeah,
this is
I
not
know,
for residential.
but you know what? You can't go upon somebody else's property and saying, well, Joe Blow said it's buried here.
Right, but that is the kind of information we wanna capture, is kind of, like you said, you've worked in the area, live in the area, and you have
I
information.
just don't wanna see people live there.
Yeah,
It should be
yeah.
stored.
So
I'm
let's,
sure you guys have been doing this.
so let's get started. Brad's gonna take us through the uses, and then as we go through, that's exactly what we wanna collect from people, is what their preferences are.
I wanna
what-
hit golf balls off the top of my roof and see what I can hit.
So this will be popular.
The survey,
Yes,
okay, if that's okay?
Please.
Awesome. Can you clarify for me, under community center / senior center, what do you mean by indoor industrial? Or institutional, sorry, indoor institutional?
We will get there if we can.
Oh,
I'll
great,
address
okay,
it and
I don't mind, yeah, you
we'll
wanna
go
just
through one
insert
by
it here?
one, and then
That's
we'll,
perfect. Let's
as
start
they
here
come
and
up.
then we'll get there.
Alright, so just as an example, this is the first one. We'll have it up on the slide and then you'll also have it number one on your paper, so we'll read it and if any questions come up, please let us know and then we'll ask you to, again, rate it from 1 to 6. There's stars on there, circle it, fill it in, just indicate what's your preference on this particular one. For those who can't quite see it, I'll just read some of it. So the first one is active outdoor recreation. Recreational land uses which involve active recreational activities. There's a difference there between active and passive uses. But this one is active. There's examples. You see a guy golfing. There's tennis courts, basketball courts, small diamonds, etc. So what is your level of enthusiasm or what's your preference for this? Little is 1, a lot would be 6.
Whose responsibility to maintain that center?
That's really, yeah, that's a good discussion for down the road. If that's a comment that you'd like to qualify your answer, you can certainly write that in. At this point, we're just seeing what people like and what people don't like.
Well, you're looking at essentially a city park, just like soccer field down off of,
Yeah, it could be a city park, but it would have that active component, not
With a
just
purpose.
benches or a trail. It would have like
okay.
activities.
Now,
God forbid it's something like that because the price to get in there is prohibitive. For people that wanna go to these parks, like you can't.
sorry.
If the city takes it, like who runs, what used to be East Bay Park or what is it now, Peoples?
Peoples.
Yeah, for anybody in the community, average people to rent that place to play, it's not happening, way too expensive.
Well,
So,
Peoples only has the naming rights to it. It's like they put their name on a stadium. They don't own the property, correct?
Correct.
That's still city property, so
City park.
you have to go through the city parks department to rent it. So it has nothing to do with whose name is on it.
no, I said the name just to identify what it was, not who's charging us for the use.
All right,
Yeah.
fine.
All right, again, if you want to qualify your answer, you can write that right on there. If you think it'd be nice, but maybe not the best because it's too much to maintain or exclusive to certain people, that's a reason why you might not like it. All right, that was number 1.
Yeah, I personally
19 more, we're almost there.
Mark,
Apartment and building, this dwelling unit type consists of a single structure with 3 or more individual attached dwelling units which take access from a shared entrance or hallway.
When it's, your 1 through 10, is it left to right or right to left?
Oh, it's left to right, I'm sorry. It's 1 to 6, so
1 to 6, okay.
1 is the least desirable, 6.
6.
Yeah. And you'll notice there's 3 and 3, so you're gonna have to either, number 3 is a little less than positive, number 4 is a little more than. You can't stay neutral on these. We did that on purpose. All right. Next one, we're ready. Yes, sir.
Brad, would it be possible with each of these options to indicate how much remediation would be necessary? I mean, I know for some of them, all you have to do is dump dirt and plant grass, right? So could you please let us know how much remediation would be necessary with, or would be accomplished with each of these?
I don't know that we can do that with this level of detail. I think it's gonna be highly dependent on like where it's positioned. If they're, we're talking about hotspots earlier, you could maybe put a parking lot over a hotspot and it wouldn't really be that much. Or you may, if you're really set on the design, you may have to take some of that soil out and take it off site. I mean, that's gonna add a lot of cost. So I really can't say at this point which ones would require, I mean, we can.
I think with some of the outdoor activities though, like a park or whatever, wouldn't it just require addition of soil and grass and there
A lot
wouldn't
of
be
it would be cat.
yeah, but there wouldn't be as much remediation of the underground things, would there?
No, or they wouldn't need to be. right? Like, I
Right.
mean, to meet the requirements. Like if you put a building or something there, we didn't recognize any VOCs or organic or volatile compounds, so. But there may be some additional work on the building or something, you know, people are gonna live in it, that may be needed.
But I know at our neighborhood meetings, they have been concerned about the amount of remediation that's gonna take place. And we keep hearing from our residents, I want to remediate it to residential standards. So I think when they're looking at these options, it's important that they know this may take a minimal amount of remediation or whatever, just so it's clear for them.
Yeah.
I don't want them to come, say I wanted this, and then find out later they're not gonna do anything to clean it up underneath. So that would be the important concept.
Just
I think.
Oh, yeah.
Was there a question in the back?
Well, I was just gonna say, if I recall from the presentation the other week, that they were looking at an average of 2 to 3 feet remediating, getting rid of that soil to make things all better. Now, obviously, there's the hot spots, which they have to go further down. And then anytime you dig a basement or a foundation, you know, we don't wanna have a 3-mile island type situation, or, you know, to where vapors are coming through basements later.
Well, we didn't find any volatile compounds, so that, you know, the vapors and stuff, you know, yeah, once the site is closed, right, like there will be
Now,
additional
when you say
soil.
close, the DNR goes, it's good to go
Well,
for today.
yeah, until somebody digs in it, and then there has to be a soil management plan and everything, so. And everything is that we're moving forward with is to non-industrial standards or residential standards. That is the process that the DNR is aware of, and that's the process that the city's moving forward with. So no matter what goes there, our process that we're moving forward with is that the standards we're using are non-industrial or residential, so.
And that's because that's what the citizens want.
That is correct,
Okay.
yes, yep, and that's what the council directed us to do, yes.
And that is best practices in the middle of a residential neighborhood, particular with the policy adoptions you've had over the last 5 years. And under the strategic plan, the environmental justice policy, it's typically not allowed for the city to execute inconsistent policies in different socioeconomic areas. But I do feel with all the questions that we should at some point be able to answer them for the neighborhood and explain what best practices are, not what cheapest practices are. And I think that's what the strategic plan that was adopted lays out, as was mentioned on the MBX property. And I'll tell you, these policies mean a lot more here because this neighborhood inspired them and spearheaded them. So all of those policies were based on this neighborhood. I just think in the future, with all the questions, we need to have clear answers from the city and the DNR, what the best practices are, not what the cheapest practices are.
Yeah, I mean, agreed, right? I mean, we have minimum standards we have to meet, you know, and I think that those, you know, those answers will come from the DNR, right? These are the minimum requirements that you have to do, and the city will have to determine if they wanna go beyond those.
And the city's environmental committee, which is charged with advising on environmental policy. Yes, typically it would be inconsistent with their determinations to say it's next to a residential area, just take a dive on the remediation. So I think we'll wanna see what is the most effective approach, not the approach you've used in working class neighborhoods for the last 50 years. We want the WAS remediation, we want the Stantec East Riverfront remediation. We don't want the tank the remediation in the working class neighborhood remediation. So yeah, if we could get some legitimate, clear ideas on best practices, I think it would clear up a lot of these questions.
So I want to make sure we keep everything moving. I see some people are anxiously working ahead on their stuff already. So let's focus on land uses at the end if there's time for questions. And that way, if anybody needs to leave at that point, we'd like to try to hold the meeting to as close as we can to an hour. So throw it back to Brad.
Okay, thank you. whatever number we're on. Commercial animal boarding daycare is the next one on the screen there. Facilities where short-term and/or long-term animal boarding is provided, including commercial kennels, stables, pet daycare, and animal shelters. And then we're looking at how would you think this would fit into the 1300 Cleveland Avenue site.
And this is probably a good point to say, so this is an example of a use that wasn't on that list of permitted uses in the zoning district, but because the direction was to get feedback on non-industrial uses, we have a mix of ones that are allowed and then ones that aren't. But we still wanna get people's perspective on a variety of non-industrial uses.
All right, to the next one. Duplexes. This dwelling unit type consists of two separate family residential residences, each having private individual access and no shared internal access. Similar to twin houses, duplexes are attached side-by-side units, each with a ground floor and roof. Unlike twin houses, the two dwelling units in a duplex are located on one lot. Again, this is where we're not just looking at one duplex on the whole site, it could potentially be subdivided into multiple duplexes. But duplexes is the land use that we're looking for feedback on. That makes sense? Yeah. Okay. All right. Next is grocery store, and this falls under indoor sales or service in our zoning code. That's actually the land use, so grocery store is a specific type under that land use. As you'll see in the definition, the sale and or display of merchandise or equipment or non-personal or non-professional services entirely within an enclosed building, includes general merchandise stores, grocery stores, etc. And these, it should be said, these are just sample images. We actually used AI in some of this just to give an idea of what it could look like. Group daycare center, 9+ children. Facilities which provide child care services for 9 or more children. There's some qualifications there. It could be in conjunction with other uses or a standalone center. And this is differentiated from like a family, or I'm sorry, an in-home daycare, which are allowed in different districts. This would be like a commercial, more of a commercial, larger daycare center. All right. Next is restaurants, taverns, and indoor commercial entertainment. Land uses which provide entertainment services entirely within an enclosed building. And it does say that these activities do have the potential to be associated with nuisances like noise, light, etc. Examples, and there's a lot of different things that fall under that, corner restaurants or bakery, but also taverns, theaters, bowling alleys, more active type stuff as well. All right. Next is community center / senior center, and this falls, that's a specific type. It's under what's called indoor institutional. That's what you'll find in the zoning code as a land use category. And it should be said, land use categories are pretty broad. It's not just one specific use, but especially in this case, you can see it includes a lot of different things. And then within the zoning district, there's various land uses. So the zoning district actually does encompass a lot of different things. This again, indoor institutional is indoor public and not-for-profit recreational facilities such as gyms, swimming pools, libraries, museums, and community centers. It also includes government facilities, schools, churches, etc.
So that's where my question came in.
Yes.
Is because it specifically points out that this has to be not-for-profit. And we had talked as a neighborhood group several times about that area being a good adult daycare, and an adult daycare or is a licensed setting, which does not have to be non-for-profit. There are also adult day service centers, which are not licensed and also don't have to be not-for-profit. So where would you anticipate that falls? Because right now, under your definition of group daycare, if you go back to that, it specifically said it was for children, 9 children and over. So where would you put the licensed adult daycare or adult day services that we've talked about several times at this group? And I know that feedback has gotten back to the city.
Okay, well, this is indoor public and not-for-profit recreational, well, that's recreational facilities. Government facilities, so you're saying it's a state
have to be
licensed
not-
public or
It's,
not-for-profit?
it's public, but it doesn't have to be not-for-profit, it could be a for-profit organization, but it is for adults. So where is that going, where would that fall, under which one of these categories, if I wanted to put that as a 6, where can I put that?
If we have a write-in at the end, we have a write-in, so if it doesn't fit neatly into one of these, there's like an open field at the end. So that'd be a good spot to just put the specifics of what your desire, what you think would work best, like in terms of the number of people, or if it was privately run or publicly run, and just notate that, and we'll be sure to include those comments.
You have nonprofit fraternal organizations, but you also have private institutional businesses. What do you consider a private institutional business? Would it be a daycare for a senior center that would be privately held and for profit? Would it not?
Yeah, I mean, we'd have to, usually what we do is we'll look at the proposal and see where it fits, so it kind of depends on the logistics of how it's run, who's running it, I mean, but that's where it's nice, if you have a specific idea, it'd be great to just include that, and then we could include that in the, whether or not we know exactly where it fits right now, we'd be sure to include that information.
Okay, thanks for the question. We'll move on. Live, work, building. A multi-unit building typically arranged in a townhouse side-by-side format in which each unit contains a commercial use on the ground floor with the residential use on upper floors, with both uses occupied by the same resident/business operator. And the commercial use is typically interconnected to the residential use with an internal stair or elevator. So this is, you see these around occasionally. It's not as common lately, but the important part is that it's connected. The commercial space and the residential space are owned by the same person that kind of lives above it, and there's no separation between them. They're not a physical barrier. We'll see the next one is actually very similar. It's a mixed-use building, which this is different in the sense that it's generally the commercial's on the first floor, operated by someone else that lives above it, usually in apartments. So there's separation there. They're not connected by internal hallways and stairways, if that makes sense. So we're kind of taking two at the same time. A live-work building, generally owner-occupied, perhaps, not necessarily, but versus a mixed-use building, which would be more rental, I would say, but larger scale. Any questions on that? All right. Next is multiplex. This dwelling unit type consists of 3 or more individual attached dwelling units which have private individual exterior entrances. This is an example there on your screen. We'll get to townhouses too. They're similar to townhouses. Townhouses are always 2 stories or more. Multiplexes can be 1 story, but the concept is similar, that there's individual entrances for each unit, as opposed to an apartment building which has a hallway connecting the units, internal hallway. All right. Next is outdoor garden display. On the specific land, or the land use category is outdoor display, and this includes a variety of things. There's a picture there of an outdoor garden center. It's land uses where the sale and display of merchandise or equipment is conducted outside of an enclosed building on more than a temporary basis. Examples include, but are not limited to, outdoor garden centers, outdoor recreation equipment sales, and so forth. And this is standalone. It's not accessory to like a store where sometimes they put stuff outside. This would just be predominantly their sales occur outside of a building. All right. Natural area, this falls under passive outdoor recreation as opposed to the active outdoor recreation that we saw earlier. Recreational land uses which involve passive recreational activities such as arboretums, natural areas, wildlife areas, hiking trails, bike trails, quiet activities like that. All right, next is physical activity studio, all land uses which provide a facility for training, instruction, and physical activity within an enclosed building. Examples include health or fitness centers, training studios, yoga, dance, art, martial arts. All right, next is a restaurant specifically. Again, that's under a broader category under restaurants, taverns, and indoor commercial entertainment. So this one focuses specifically on a restaurant versus the other uses that are listed there. Next is a senior housing development. There's not an explanation on this one, but it's basically a multi-family development that's geared towards people 55 up.
Yeah, we don't really have a separate category for this, it's not really a separate land use, but we just thought it'd be something interesting to include. So to us, it would just, from a zoning standpoint, it'd be more what the layout is, like what the types of units are they connected, are they single family? But we were just interested, I guess, to get preferences on this specifically. Louder, okay. Should I say it again? Okay, so this isn't a separate category in the zoning code. We don't, I don't even know if legally you can have, I can't remember if you can do age-related zoning. But in terms of the land use, we just wanted to include this as an option because we thought we were interested just to get the preferences on this. But it would be categorized like other housing. If it's single family, we look at it like single family. If it's attached, we look at it as attached, so. Could be a variety of styles.
All right, next is single-family dwelling units. This dwelling unit, I think people probably know what this is. Consists of a fully detached single-family residence which is located on an individual lot.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How many homes would actually be fit on that acres?
That would, well, they would need to go through a couple different processes. Right now, it wouldn't be allowed in the zoning district. You have to change to a single-family district, and there's 5 different single-family zoning districts, and they allow different densities and different lot sizes. So some have very small lot sizes, and some more on the outskirts of the city have larger lot sizes. So it would depend on which zoning district you go to. Go ahead, Karen.
Well, an interesting reference, and sorry because it's behind everyone, but that big map is the zoning map. And the district directly east is TF10, is that right, Brad?
Yep, I think so.
So a lot of those are single-family homes, and it's approximately 10 units per acre is the goal density on that. So if you kind of just want a sense of perspective, if it was zoned the same as that area, however many homes are on that block is probably about what would fit in that tan. The tan square is this parcel, it's highlighted, but it's hard to see from here. And then to the east is all TF10, that kind of greenish color. I don't even know what you really call that, but that's probably something similar.
So I have a question. So are there advantages to any of these as far as if we were looking at like the density, so to speak? So if it was 10 for single family homes, is there a way we could find out whether or not it could actually house more families or like have a greater density with different layouts?
Yep, so usually attached units have greater density, and then if it's single family, it basically just comes down to lot size. I mean, so a more high density district would allow more single family homes. But if people like privacy more, then they would want a larger lot. But the trend more recently has become toward higher density. I would say versus like the 90s and, everyone was doing the large lot sizes and we found that that wasn't always great.
Yeah, and single-family districts compared to like two-family districts compared to multifamily districts are less dense because they're single units on a property versus, like TF10 you could build, I don't know if it's in here, but one on top of the other. So there's two units in the same footprint as you get in a single-family home. So again, there are different densities depending on the single-family district, and then there's different densities if you go from single-family to duplex to multiplex and up the density scale of the zoning, if that makes some sense. Yes, sir.
What kind of time frame are we looking? I mean, it's out there. How long do you think till a decision is made?
A decision is made on like what is happening at the site?
Yeah,
or?
I'm just wondering, I mean, are we talking a year, 2, 10?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, a lot of the uses that we're talking about now, the city government isn't going to be building single-family homes or duplexes. I mean, we'll have to rely on the private sector to partner with us, and it kind of depends on, what the developers, the builders see as the market. If there's a strong market for a certain type of house, they may want to come in right away. It depends on what the remediation, the action plan is going to be. If there's going to be an ask from, the incentives all play into that. I mean, it's really hard to predict. I mean, we'll try to move ahead as fast as we can.
There's a lot of hands in the stew. Yeah. And we all know too many hands in the stew.
Sure.
That's why we're all here, is we want to know where we're going.
And I think
what we looking at.
I think the best way to think about it right now is if you imagine a funnel. We're really at the top of that funnel trying to figure out, it's really broad what we're talking about here, because we haven't narrowed it down yet. Some of you were probably at the Thomas Street infill project that was about 2 years ago. That was when we were way at the bottom of the funnel. We're talking about designs of homes, porches, driveways, and things like that. We're really looking for broad ideas right now, and it's gonna take us time to funnel that down as we move forward, kind of in coordination with the environmental aspects of it.
Yeah, and I personally believe it should be inspected a little bit harder. That's my opinion.
To date, has there been any interest from a grocery store or arboretum or anything?
In the past, so just a little history on that, in 2020, the city put out an RFP on the site that was really general. I think there was 4 different proposals that came back at that point. One was an industrial use, one was for low-income apartment housing, help me on the 3rd and 4th.
One was the reason, one aligned with the MRL 12, I think, right? So that probably was like a multifamily kind of thing.
So there's been interest on the site before, and really, talked about earlier how we're running the environmental and looking at land use at the same time, because we really need both of those moving along so that we can make the best informed decision that's going to make the most sense financially as well, in terms of minimizing cleanup costs and making sure the cleanup's done right for the future use.
Absolutely. Financial, you know what, we all live here, whatever we should get the best tax.
Terry?
I was just gonna say it might be helpful relieving some of these questions if they realize that when we move forward in the meeting, you're gonna be talking about how we're moving forward with another meeting and so forth. We're not gonna you may wanna explain that we're not gonna just do this and then be done, so they understand that you'll be moving forward a little bit. I think that might relieve some of the anxiety.
That's a really good point. I mean, like you said, we're at the very early stages of this process, and this process will have a lot more layers to it, definitely.
We'll answer some of those questions at the end if we can. Let's get through the land uses now. I know some people probably need to get going at a certain point. We're getting close to 6:30. But we'll work through the land uses now. If there's questions at the end, happy to answer those, and anybody that needs to get going can do so.
Yep, just a couple more here. Townhouse is the next one. Dwelling unit consists of attached 2-story residences, each having a private individual access. Dwelling unit type may be located on its own lot or within a group development. Again, it's kind of minor details between some of these different types, but they're all different versions of like medium density or low density residential, but a little higher than the single family, but not like a bigger apartment building. All right. Twin homes, again, similar thing, 2 units. This difference you won't be able to tell by looking at it, but there's a property line that goes right between the 2 units. So they're on technically separate parcels of land. All right, and 2 flat. And this is a 2-unit building, up, down, 1 unit above, 1 unit below. And that's it for land uses. You should be at the end of your survey. There are some other questions on the back, some demographic information to identify who you are. And again, some open-ended questions to write in some land uses that you may not have seen but you'd like to see or you have questions about. There's an opportunity at the last question to write in any land uses you did not see.
Question back?
There seems to be a big divide between what the city considers affordable housing and what the neighborhoods consider affordable housing. 43% of the people that live in this town cannot comfortably afford to live here. We need affordable housing.
Yeah, that would be great. We should get that in that. This is what that section's for. That's the information we want to hear. Any other questions?
Why can't we just go straight ahead with remedial to residential standards? Because that has been repeated over and over. City council has talked about it, politicians have talked about it, but you keep wanting to put it off on a back burner until the DNR decides something. Why can't we just go ahead and do it?
Part of the process and part of the remediation is determining future land use, so that's part of it. This is gonna.
No, we've already decided it's gonna be residential specifications.
It's not industrial, yeah.
All right, if we gotta go to that standard, why can't we just go ahead and do it? Instead of trying to bury, we'll bring in 2 feet of dirt. Well, that's just burying the problem.
Exactly.
You guys put in a well 100 feet from my house. I don't know what information you got out of it, but I see here not too long ago, they closed the well back up. Maybe they don't wanna know what's there. I don't know. But the maps that I saw showed the contamination coming my way. I don't want to be the responsible person for it, and neither does anybody else in the neighborhood. We need to get rid of it, not bury it, because it's running downhill. It's running downhill with the water.
And I live downhill.
Well, there's a lot of people who live downhill, okay? And the contamination's coming out in somebody's garden down here on Shelley Street. We can't letting it keep going down the road. Can't anybody understand what you have decided and just get with the program?
Yep, and that's the process we're working, I think.
No, the process just keeps going on and on and on. We had another meeting like this where they showed us all kinds of pictures. What did you guys do with that one?
That was a long time ago.
You think of the Thomas Street info project?
No, it was about this project right
It
here.
was.
Okay.
And it was several years ago, but we went through this whole thing. You hired an outside consultant to come in and show us pictures. We did all of this. It's the same thing we did tonight. We have just duplicated and put it off and put it off.
Yep.
You can't tell me we gotta start over again.
Yeah, that was the Thomas Street info. So
No. I was there.
It was here. It was
right here.
Yep.
Okay.
It was over this piece of property that we're talking about, 1300 Cleveland Avenue.
Yeah, so the roar, what Eric talked about earlier, is gonna inform that process, and that's what we're moving forward with. I hear you, that you wanna keep it moving, and this is, we're working with the DNR. You heard Eric talking today that he was talking with them. We wanna move it forward, we wanna see it cleaned up as well, but unfortunately, it's a process. That's the best answer I have for you.
The process has been going on for 20 years.
More than that.
Yep.
Yeah, more than
We
that.
don't want it capped over, we want it taken care of.
Yep.
If this gentleman is correct in saying that there's all this bad contamination here that's possibly causing cancer, every time we have rain, that chemical is running downhill. And eventually, it's gonna hit not only the homes, it's gonna hit any waterways.
Well,
We need to get rid of it. And also, if this is as bad as he says it is, that I would consider that land inhabitable, which is
Not inhabitable.
well, you can't live there.
Yeah, we hear you, Tom?
Yes, just very briefly, I mean, what I've heard from residents tonight and for years is, downtown on the East River front, like where the former mall redeveloped, they excavated, there was no qualms from the city, they didn't say we're gonna put 2 feet of grass on it. I think as much as possible, for the comfort of the neighborhood after decades now, we'd like to see maybe more on the excavation side.
Can I just say something as a city council member? Because I'm on the ED committee, and I think that I know the council all cares about this. I think that one thing that's just a little bit hard is as I'm looking, since I've been serving, which is just, this is my 4th year. Most of the people here for staff are new. So I understand, like I can really hear the frustration from a lot of you, but I just wanna point out that, like, I know I serve on committees with a lot of the people here, and they really do wanna help. But I think the hard thing is that they're not the ones that made those decisions years ago. So just if you can keep that in mind, I think for, like, we understand your frustration, and I'm here because, well, I used to live in this neighborhood years ago, for a lot of years actually. But, so I'm concerned about it too, but I just wanted to point that out because when we say like, this happened and how long is this going to take, and I understand, I really do. Because I used to walk the streets of this neighborhood and I, like, Marathon Rubber and, the SME and Crestline and
that property
my former husband worked at one of those and someone would fall in the dip tank. So like, I really honestly get it, but I just think if you can remember that these people are new and they're not the ones that, that ignored it, while also acknowledging your frustration and your anger. I do understand that. But I just wanted to point that out because I really do feel that, I really do believe they do want to help. So
And the pill from Crestline, from all these companies, from the toy company, they all use pill. And for those who don't understand, that's a preservative, it goes in the ground, and if it gets on your skin, it kills you. If it's, the body only can take so much of that. If it gets on your skin, we breathe through. Well, anyways, there's a lot of stuff out there, and I really believe we need to look into that and then do a property that's not inhabitable by people, like storage shed. People ain't living there. They drop their stuff off. To me, that's one of the best, to put people on property that we all know is contaminated.
Thank you for saying that. That's very much appreciated. I agree, you guys have a super tough job and it's hard to come into a room when you know people are already on edge. But also, you're not the ones that cause this and we know that, but you're the ones that can fix it. And so that's what we're asking for, is to come with answers. That's what Tom is saying, is come with answers, come with timelines, come saying, hey, you guys, just so you know, there's an ED meeting next Tuesday on the 3rd, why don't you come? That would have been something to really open up with tonight, to let everybody in this room know so that they could come and give public comment. I'll let everybody know, next Tuesday, there's a meeting down at City Hall, I believe it's at 5:30. Go and give your public comment so you're on the record, because tonight is just a public hearing, or a public listening session. It's not on the record, it's not anything to do with being on the record down at City Hall, so please, go ahead, give your input downtown. This is, next week, they're talking about this at the ED meeting. So I hear what you're saying, I appreciate it, but now's the time to fix it and say, and come in with that attitude of, we get it's been a long time, we're trying to fix it, we hear what you're saying, and we're gonna do everything we can. So I hope I speak for the neighborhood in saying thanks for coming, but that we really wanna help move things forward.
And thank you for that, that's a great plug. We will have an update for the committee because we have Chair Lukens here from the committee, but we also have 4 other members. So we'll be updating them on this meeting and our process moving forward from it as well. So thank you.
You work on getting that survey out so we can all share it and get as many responses as possible.
Absolutely.
And that's a great segues to this slide, so I really appreciate everyone. So thank you so much for taking the time to do this, we greatly appreciate it, we know you took time out of your busy schedule. We will be assembling the results after a 30-day period, so it's gonna be open for another 30-day period. You'll be able to, I'll email it to the list, you'll be able to go online, the city has a public facing page. You can come in person and get one, whatever works the best, but it'll be open for 30 more days, so if you know people that were unable to attend, please let them know, we would like the more feedback the better. After that period, once we've compiled the results, those results will go to the Economic Development Committee because that's what they asked for. They wanted the non-industrial land use preferences from the public. So we're hoping to get a great response and we really, really appreciate it. And these are our personal contact information if you have specific questions, if this made you think of something else or you want to know more about the property or anything else, feel free to contact us and we'd love to follow up with you and keep the conversation going and like everyone has said, to keep it moving forward and see some action and some next steps. So thank you very much for coming out.
Thank you. And next month, same time, Thursday the 26th, the DNR will be presenting. They will be able to answer questions about how to remediate for safe development. So.
And I think it's privileged to have